how to handle any objection. So if you want to learn how to handle any objection and really feel confident in any situation, no matter what the client says, buyer, seller, whoever it is, I'm going to teach you some really powerful patterns that in the next few minutes will kind of break down how you can be comfortable in any situation. Let's start off here. I had to look up the definition of what an objection was. I've been doing sales for 20 years, but the definition here that I looked up this morning, sales objections are the reason why your prospects can't or won't buy your product or service. Pretty high level, makes sense. We hear objections like, I don't know if I want to move because of the interest rates. So this is the powerful objection handling patterns. And there's a few different methods we can use, but I want to give you a general framework. And there's really a few steps. The first step of handling objection is to ignore it when it first comes up. Now, I want you to use your judgment on this one. I'm not saying that you should literally not listen to what your clients say, right? If it makes sense, if it's logical, and if it has to be addressed, you're not trying to frustrate them. You just want to see in certain scenarios how committed they are to this objection. First of all, we want to make a distinction. There's a difference between an objection and a question. A question is a very simple statement given an answer to it. And even some questions are better answered later on. If at the beginning of a listing presentation, someone says, what do you charge? My response is, great question. We will absolutely handle that. And then I will continue on and I'll come back to it. It's not my job to necessarily bring that up again. When we go to sign the paperwork, I don't have to say, hey, remember you wanted to ask for a discount, right? If they're committed to this objection, it's going to come up again. First step is to ignore in a lot of cases. But after that, we want to restate. And I'm going to teach you a technique in a minute for restating things in a different way that goes into a bit of objection handling. But at its really core, restating is just repeating back to someone so that they know you're listening, so you can make sure you've got it right. So again, let's use this one because I think this comes up a lot these days on the buyer side.
I don't know if I want to move because interest rates are really high.
You want to repeat and say, yeah, I get it. You're concerned with interest rates. Something really short and sweet. Yep, they hear you. The next step after we restate is to isolate. These next two steps are probably two of the most important. And I think when people go through this framework, these are the steps that people often skip. Someone gives you an objection and you want to dive into it. You want to start talking about it. If you don't isolate that objection, you're going to end up handling that one only to have another one or two or three or four more objections pop up behind it. Let me give you an example of what I mean by isolate. Other than interest rates, is there anything else that would stop you from wanting to buy a house? Other than commission, is there anything else that would stop us from working together? Other than blank, is there anything else that would get in the way or that would keep you from wanting to move forward? That's the idea of isolating, because you might find there's 2-3 other things that come in there. For example, they might say, well, I'm a little worried about losing my job, or I just lost my job, or I had a bankruptcy. Okay, now we're getting into the realm of another distinction I want you to make. Write this down. There's a distinction between an objection and a condition. I think probably the best example of objection versus condition is a buyer who wants a 1-story home. You're out there showing houses. You pull up to a house. It has 2 stories. And they say, man, we really just want a 1-story house. You could do your best to handle this objection all day long, but truly, that's more of a condition. There's nothing to handle there. Like, it's just, you missed either finding out about that in advance or really hearing what your client's looking for. And so when you can distinguish between a condition and something that really can't be changed, you guys get that, right? 1-story versus 2-story, that's conditional. So as you're going through this, I don't really want you worried about, is it a condition or is it an objection? Because if your brain starts going down that road, it's going to be hard to handle it. But as you start to look back on, why did that not go the way I wanted to? Think about it. Were they asking me an objection or a question? And was it a condition or an objection? These things will give you that filter. But once we isolate the objection, okay, other than interest rates, is there anything else that would stop you wanting to buy a house? No, that's pretty much it. Right? Once we isolate that, the next step is going to be to cushion it. So we've got ignore, restate, isolate. Now we're going to cushion it. And cushion's a pretty straightforward one, which just lets you take the edge off it. They use the term normalizing. You ever heard that term? Normalizing means to make someone feel like they're right on track, right? So let's say they said, I don't want to move. Interest rate's pretty high. I'm going to isolate it. Is there anything else? Other than an objection? I'm going to cushion it. I'm going to say, you know what? That's what most of the buyers I'm talking to right now say. Okay, you're right on track. That's pretty much the feeling going on out there. And let me show you a few things that we can do to address that concern, right? We're going to cushion it. You're right on track. Everyone else will say, well, you list my house for X%, something really low compared to what you normally charge. You might say, I like the way you think, right? Most of my clients, actually, it's a conversation we have right before they hire me. Just make them feel normal. So that it helps them feel less defensive. It helps them feel less defensive. After we cushion it, that's when we go to this handle step here. I really want you feeling confident that you can handle any objection. That's the idea today, is handle any objection. But after you handle it, then we're always going to close. This is yet again another step that a lot of agents miss, especially if you're newer in sales and you're lacking some of that confidence. The whole idea of fake it till you make it, the reason why it's effective for a lot of people, it allows them to come across as confidently, but they're going to continue to ask for the order. It doesn't have to be a hardcore close of like, sign here, right? That's kind of old school sales tactics. It might be something softer in a listing situation where you're more just like, so do you want the photographer to come out, end of this week or sometime next week? It's a very soft close, a way of just moving into the next step, something like that. Okay, that's the close. That's the whole statement here. But I want to point out one thing that underlies all of this. There's only two reasons why someone won't do business with you. They either don't see the value or they feel threatened. They don't see the value, they feel threatened. So think about it. Trust, that'll fall under this category of they feel threatened, and I'll explain. They don't like you. That falls under the category of they feel threatened. Or if they like you, that's value because they want to do business with people they like. So here's how these categories work. See value? When we get to this objection handling, to the handle section of an objection, you're going to want to illustrate value and remove the threat. Illustrate value, remove the threat. I think the most important thing of anything I said, less about the words and more about the confidence which I said them. People will rarely remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel, right? And that famous quote, right? It's the same thing in sales. And the reason why people are asking objections is because they want to do business with you. I want you to keep that in mind. That's the most important thing. They're not asking objection because they don't want to do business with you. If they didn't want to do business, they wouldn't bother giving the objection. They want to do business with you, and they're trying to figure out how they can justify and feel good about it. And when they tell their friends, they're like, so you just have to give them a way that they can feel comfortable. Otherwise, they're going to tell their family member, their friend, their neighbor, yeah, I listed my house with a brand new agent. Their friend's going to be like, you did what? And they don't want to look bad. No one wants to look bad. So give them the information they need so they can feel really good about it. Man, I met the most energetic agent. This person was incredible. Communication was fantastic. And they got me, right? That's going to go a long way.